Hey there, February might still feel like winter for a lot of people, but here in Arkansas, Zone 8A, it's a busy time in the garden. My average last frost date is early April, which means I'm getting a head start on plenty of crops. Some indoors, some directly in the soil, and some right here in the greenhouse. So let's walk through what I'm planting this month, including the varieties that I've chosen to grow this year. First up, I am sowing beets indoors. A lot of people direct sow beets, but I like starting some indoors early just to give them a little extra time. But I do indoors sow beets differently than I do my other crops. I start them in these 16 cell Epic cell trays, which you can see are tiny, with the purpose of transplanting them out shortly after they sprout. As a root crop, I want to get them into their permanent home in the garden as soon as possible to reduce root disturbance. This also allows them to acclimate quickly. In starting beet seeds this way, I'm able to get better germination rate with warm soil and ultimately eliminate gaps or wasted seed that can occur in direct sowing beets. So here are a few of the varieties that I'm growing this year. Some are new, some are tried and true that I've grown in the past. First, I have Formanova. I don't have a lot of this seed left, so I found a similar one from Baker Creek called Cylindra. What I like about these is they have a longer shape, and I love that because I can all of my beets. I make pickled beets, and it makes it easier just to slice them when I'm getting ready to pickle them. The next variety is Moneta. Moneta is one that I have used in the past, and it's done really well. This year I'm trying a new one called Bettina. Now, I can't remember why I bought this one. I usually make notes here in my planner. So on my seed and plant research sheet, I have written down that I like it because it's supposed to be large and round. Again, because I pickle my beets, because I can them, I really don't care that much about having small, tender baby beets. I want as much as I can get out of a beet because it's less processing and work time when I'm canning it. And then I have Boro, which is a variety that I have used in the past, and it's done really well. So those are the varieties of beets I'm going to be planting. Next, toward the end of the month, it'll be time to start some of my warm season favorites indoors, namely tomatoes and peppers. Peppers need a long growing season, so giving them a head start inside ensures that they'll be strong and ready to go once the temperatures warm up. This year, for the varieties of peppers that I'm growing, I really am paring back because I just want to grow the ones that I know do really well, and I'm not really experimenting with anything new. My tried and true variety of peppers is Emerald Giant peppers. I first started planting them several years ago. I was finally able to find the seeds again from True Leaf Market. They do really well in my Arkansas garden. So that's the bell pepper that I'm going to use. The jalapeno pepper is going to be Megatron. This came from Botanical Interests, and I like this because it's a larger jalapeno, so it's great for stuffing. Next, I have Notapeno. This is probably my very favorite because it's a jalapeno without the heat. I love making candied jalapenos. I eat them year-round. I actually ate them this morning with my hard-boiled eggs for breakfast. I know it may sound gross, but it's actually delicious. But I like it because it doesn't have the heat, but you have that delicious jalapeno flavor. And then finally, I have banana peppers because my husband and son love pickled banana peppers, so I'm growing these for them this year. The next thing I'm going to start indoors is tomatoes. Though tomatoes are quick growers inside compared to peppers, I want them to be ready to go in the garden as soon as our last frost has passed. Because in Arkansas, our summers come early and quickly, my goal is to have tomatoes set fruit before the average high temperatures soar above 85. Coupled with humidity, tomatoes struggle in the heat, so planting early helps ensure a good harvest before the heat of summer arrives. I am still in February, not entirely sure whether I'm going to plant paste tomatoes for canning. I am running a little bit low on some of my jarred items like salsa in particular, so I may actually grow some paste tomatoes, but since I haven't decided, I'm just sharing with you the slicing tomatoes that I'm growing. The first one is Eva's Purple Ball. This is one that I tried a few years ago. Absolutely love it, especially for our heat. It produces about pool ball size tomatoes, and it's a really great producer. It produced all summer for me. Another one I'm trying is seeds that a friend sent to me from Texas called Verona. These are more of a paste tomato, but they're a little bit bigger than a grape tomato. He said they were supremely productive in his garden. I actually started these early. These will actually go in my greenhouse in a grow bag, and then hopefully I can get some early tomatoes out of those. Next I have pineapple. This is a delicious slicing tomato. I use it for salsas and bruschettas, but I know a lot of people who love just eating tomatoes plain. They love this variety. Plus, it does pretty well in our heat. And finally, I may grow Jubilee. I love the Golden Jubilee tomatoes because they are this bright orange, really sweet. I'm not sure if I will grow it or pineapple or both. The pineapples are really large, so you get a really big tomato, but the Jubilees are smaller, so they're actually more productive on the plant, and they grow really well in the heat. So I may or may not add this to pineapple. I haven't quite decided, but I'm leaning toward growing it. Now, if I do grow paste tomatoes, I'm definitely gonna grow some of the new ones that I planted a few years ago that did fantastic. I do have a video about those varieties, and I'll link that in the description. Finally, I would normally also plant eggplant at this time, but I made the last minute decision to nix that crop. If I had had seeds from last year, I would have included them, but since I ended up running out, I decided I don't really love eggplant that much to buy a new seed pack. It's just one of those decisions that I made to make room for other crops that I love more. One final crop that I sow in February is my second round of lettuce. I like to keep lettuce going in succession so I can have extended harvest in the spring. My timing this year is to sow lettuce indoors about every 3 weeks. So earlier in the month, I actually started sowing some of my lettuce indoors. It has already sprouted. And then later in the month, I'll do it again. But the further I get into February, the more I'm shifting away from the cold tolerant lettuce and more toward the heat tolerant lettuce. Here you can see my first round of lettuce, and I've got Tango, and I'm actually trying an iceberg lettuce called Regency. So those are the two that I planted first. And then in my inside grow room, I have a variety that I actually have here called Muir. I got this from Johnny's, and I've actually had this for about 3 years, and these are pelleted seeds. And supposedly pelleted seeds don't last as long as regular seeds. Pelleted just means they have like this clay coating on top of it. It makes it easier to sow. That way you don't have to sow like 10 of them in one cell. But they all sprouted. So that actually worked really well. Those are growing inside. And I have another variety, I can't remember what it is. But moving on to some of the other varieties that I am growing are gonna be Revolution. I grew this last year from Territorial Seed Company. In their trials, they say that this is one of the very last to bolt, which means this will be more heat tolerant. This is a red one that's actually really pretty. This variety is Monte Carlo from Johnny's. It has been, in my experience, really good for summer. It doesn't bolt as quickly as other varieties. And then next I have Cherokee. It's another red one that's supposed to not bolt as quickly from Johnny's. And then this year I bought 2 new ones. This is Hampton Easy Leaf, and it's supposed to be super productive and slow to bolt. This came from Territorial Seed Company. And then I bought some Outrageous. This is a red variety from Territorial Seeds, and I grew this last year, absolutely loved it, ran out of seeds, bought some more. So these are some of the varieties that I will be starting indoors in February this year as well. Oh, I forgot to mention. So another tomato variety that I'm going to grow again is Parks Whopper. This came from a friend, and it came from Parks Seed. It did really well in my garden last year, so I'm also adding that one to tomatoes. Moving on outdoors, although February can be cool, we do start to warm up on average, and it's the perfect time to get some cold, hardy greens going in the garden. I'll be direct sowing greens like spinach, arugula, and mixed greens directly in the garden, in my greenhouse here, and in my green stalk planters, which you can see back here. These crops love the cool weather and will grow fast this time of year. Like lettuce, they aren't a one planting and I'm done with them crops. With arugula and greens in particular, I'll be planting them about every couple of weeks, ensuring a steady supply instead of everything maturing all at once. Now, I don't necessarily do this with spinach because usually after February, it's too late to plant spinach because it's the most sensitive to heat. The first planting in February or January is usually about the only one that I can plant and get a harvest before it starts to bolt. But here are some of my favorite varieties and some new ones that I'm trying this year. So the first one is spinach. This is lizard spinach from Johnny's, and I've grown this for several years. I mean, this is like 4 years old. I like it okay, but it wasn't my favorite necessarily, so I'm trying a couple of new ones. This spinach is called Manopa from Baker Creek. Let me see why I bought that. So it's supposed to be sweet and really good for baby greens. And I want spinach for baby greens because I want to put it in my salads. I'm not so much interested in it becoming mature for cooked spinach. And then I bought Countryside from Territorial Seed Company. And it's only 32 days, which means I still should be able to get this if I plant it in February. And it's good for baby greens and it resists bolting. We'll see. Sometimes when seed companies say it resists bolting, I'm like, but have you planted them in Arkansas? But we'll see how it compares to the other one. That'll definitely be fun. Some of the other greens that I plant are mesclun greens. This is a lettuce green mix, and I just buy a really big pack from True Leaf Market. And then this is my tried and true arugula. You can't even see because I use it so much, but this is slow bolt arugula. I buy a big pack from True Leaf Market because I'm planting it all year. And then a couple of greens mixes from Johnny's I really like are Ovations greens and Premium greens mix. Those are my favorite. And you can see a couple of them back here. I think this is Premium greens mix, but I really do like those greens mixes. And as you can see, I eat them year round. Now let's talk about transplants. These are the crops that I started indoors earlier in the year that are ready to go out into the garden in February. The first one is lettuce, and it'll be these right here, the ones that I sowed back in January. When it's ready for transplanting, I will put them either here in the green stalk, in the greenhouse, depending on the weather, or outside. Once winter seems to break and low temperatures don't tend to go below mid-20s anymore, I'll eventually bring these green stalks outside. February is also the time that I plant out onion transplants, namely any intermediate day or long day types that I'm growing. The ones here that you see in the green stalk, and then I have some in the grow bags, these are short day onions that I planted back in the fall. So I like to plant my intermediate and long day in the spring. That gives them plenty of time to grow leaves before the day length triggers bulb growth. And if that's all new to you, I have a video all about that. I'll link that in the description. Finally, if late February weather provides a mild stretch, I'll plant out my broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower transplants that you see right here. But looking at the weather, I'm not sure that's gonna happen, so that may be March. But these brassicas love cool temperatures, and getting them early means a solid harvest before the heat kicks in. Plus, these need a little bit more time to grow, as you can see. Now, I don't just grow vegetables. Flowers are a big part of my garden too. And February is the perfect time to start some of my favorites in the greenhouse. I'm sowing nasturtium, alyssum, and calendula. And here's some of my favorite varieties. First, starting with alyssum, I like both the Allure Pastel Blend from Botanical Interest. These are purple. And Carpet of Snow. This is a very common one, but I bought these from True Leaf Market. I will say the Carpet of Snow, which are white, tend to attract pollinators more, at least in my experience, than the purple, but I really like the purple. They're very pretty. For nasturtium, I have a dwarf nasturtium mix. This came from White Harvest Seed Company, but you can get this at most seed companies. These are going to be smaller, more compact, really good for containers. But I also like the trailing nasturtium. This is from Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. But I like these because these will actually climb up trellises, which I love to do alongside cucumbers. And then this year I'm trying a new one from Baker Creek called Cherry Rose Jewel. I just really loved that reddish pink color. I hope it's going to be as striking in the garden. It is on the picture. And then finally, I have calendula. I love planting calendula, and I have two kinds this year. One is Pacific Beauty Blend, and one is Zeolites. Both of those came from Botanical Interest. The Zeolites is a really pretty pinkish mauve color, but there's nothing like the oranges and yellows of the Pacific Beauty Blend. Now, the reason I'm starting these a little bit earlier than especially my warm season flowers is because most of these can handle some light frosts. So I usually try to plant them in the garden in late March or early April, leading up to my average last frost date. So that's what I'm planting this February here in Arkansas. It is such an exciting time because even though it's still technically winter, we're already laying the groundwork for a productive spring and summer garden. One last thing, if you don't live in a climate similar to mine, you won't be able to copy what I'm planting in February. I know, I'm sorry, but I do have an easy chart for you to help calculate when you can plant your crops. It's called the When to Plant Cheat Sheet, and you can grab it in the link in the description. I hope you find it helpful. With ideal plant timing, you'll set the stage for a productive garden all season. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again next week.